is this. Can you stop for a second and start over again? Good morning.
Good morning.
Today we're going to continue to talk about the Oxfording pictures. So right now I'm on number 4. So this is number 4 right here. See the little guy here, and he's captured the ox, but it looks like the ox is about to kick him here. So the ox is not being terribly cooperative. So this is this stage in practice where, we've invested enough of our energy into starting serious ongoing practice. We have a grasp of the teachings, but that grasp is probably mostly intellectual. And I would say that we are having problems at that point, or maybe even not understanding how we apply the teachings to our life in general. And then, for example, you might know that your goal in practice is that you want to be compassionate, but when compassion gets in the way of your personal, somewhat selfish agenda, then it goes out the window. So anyway, doing practice can be really difficult. So this is actually what's happening here in number 4, is that this person in the picture, it's a little guy, but anyone who's a practitioner, we start to struggle with we can call it our neurotic tendencies, but anyway, whatever it is getting in our way of being able to practice. So if we look at number 4 from a Soto Zen perspective, then what is it? How do we practice in a way, or what is our practice in Soto Zen that helps us to deal with this aspect of our practice about our selfishness, our ego-ness, whatever you want to call it? So that's what I want to talk about today. So the first thing is that I always encourage people, like I have a couple students who live in other towns. I always encourage them to go and find a Zen center, because our practice is really grounded in relationships. It's really grounded in relating to each other. Doing Zazen by yourself is fine. That's great. If that's what you need to do, okay. But ideally, you need the whole package of Soto Zen to do the practice. So that's what I want to talk about today. So Bodhisattva practice is about how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to other people. So are all beings, how we relate to everything that we encounter hopefully in a mature way. That's what our process is about, is finding out how to be mature practitioners and engaging others and other beings and persons in particular, so that our activity is skillful. Ideally, it may be healing, cooperative, supportive of self and other. So the goal of the practice of the Bodhisattva practice is to be able to respond to others and to yourself with wisdom and compassion and skillful means. So, and how that comes about. So the object of practice is not to go into special states or have special experiences or things like that. It's really grounded in your everyday life. If it's not manifesting in your everyday life, there's work to be done. Suzuki Roshi said, you're perfect just as you are, and there is work to be done. So that perfectness is this way in which we are all Buddha nature. We are all the nature of Buddha. We all have this capacity for and it's already part of us as it is of all beings. So, how do we wake up to that? So, so we learn and we cultivate and we express this activity in formal practice. And formal practice is zazen, ceremony, work practice, engaging with our teacher. And we do all of this within the context of Sangha, which is very important. So all of these activities are like a mandala, working together, functioning together. And they're also teaching tools for us to come up against and to find out about ourselves. And so that's what I want to talk about, some examples of that today. So, when you enter fully into practice in this way, you've caught the bull, but catching the bull may be a mixed blessing, because as you see in the picture, the bull is not cooperating with your idea or our idea about what it is to be enlightened, right? It's like enlightenment is some kind of state in which we don't have to deal with all the mishigash of being human being. Somehow we get to transcend that, but all of a sudden, here we are with this bull that's not cooperating with this idea that we have. So this is entering really, I think entering practice is when you go into a Sangha. I used to practice by myself when I was in my 20s. I might have mentioned this before. I could practice by myself and I would go off and I might sit for, I don't know, 8 hours a day. I mean, I had a job, so on the weekend or something. And I could sit zazen. I wasn't actually doing zazen. I was doing a different kind of meditation practice. But the thing was, my people skills sucked. And so I had a friend one time who said she was driving with me and I was yelling and using profanities at other drivers. And she said, it's just not very holy. So how is it that so we have these kind of, if we do these practices by ourselves, and sometimes what we do is we pick the things that are comfortable for us, but we never do the things that are uncomfortable for us. So if we don't do the things that are uncomfortable for us, we never tame this ox. This ox is the one that's driving the wagon, not you sitting in the driver's seat, not this part of you that is vowing to want to, I don't know, be more wise, compassionate, be more skillful. And that's what we're going for. So if we're going to ride in this wagon, we need to figure out how to get our selfish part of us going in the same direction as the part of us that is wise and compassionate wants us to be going in. So again, we in Soto Zen, we cultivate and express this activity. We learn how to do this in our formal practice. So this practitioner, or this small self, as I said, it generated this idea of what we think enlightenment is, what the ox is. But before we can engage our practice in daily life with the mind of Buddha, we have to tame our selfish impulses. So this struggle is going to come out when you enter formal practice, for sure. And the good thing about formal practice, particularly, I hope, at Ocean Gate, is that you will not be, you're okay, you're safe. You can question the teachings, you can mess up, you can make mistakes, and we want to support your effort. We don't want to make you feel bad. So, our goal is to help you to be able to negotiate practice. So one important aspect about practice is letting go of your judgment and opinions. And so that's a little bit what I want to talk about. So this is one aspect of cultivating this practice through the self, is letting go of these opinions. So what we're going for is what in Zen we call the cultivation of no self. So what is no self? no self is no inherently existing self. So all that is in Buddhism is saying that you can function in community, really. It just means that if we understand that we are not, separate, that is not all about us, that we are not in the center of the circle, that we are, if you will, holding hands with others in the circle, when we start to understand that, then we are starting to engage in no self. It does not mean the eradication of self. It doesn't mean that you don't have a personality. It means that to have no inherently existing self means that you are in connection with everything else, right? So that's what we're going for. We're going for being able to function in that way of a knowledge that we are not, it's not all about us. So in Soto Zen, we say we are continuously or trying to continuously practice with all beings through time and space. All beings might be the practice of being aware of the environment, not, destroying other beings in our world. Practically, we don't want to do that because we have no inherently existing self, which means that we are dependent upon this functioning of the whole world for our life itself. And so, I mean, that's just a selfish way to look at environmentalism, but also from a more altruistic point of view, we want to honor and respect and see the value, the intrinsic value of all beings separate from our own selfishness. So this is at heart a very spacious and universal teaching. So closer to home is learning how to let go of your opinions, likes and dislikes, judgments and ideas when they're not helpful and they're not germane to yourself or others you're interacting with. So we all have likes and dislikes, and essentially likes and dislikes are not necessarily a problem. If you don't like chocolate cake, when you go to buy a cake for yourself, you can buy vanilla. It's not a problem. But what is a problem is when you are making up stories or have all these likes and dislikes about things that get in the way of your being able to connect with other people, to be able to have this harmonious relationship in your life. Like those people outside are playing with each other. Although the guy just said, get away from me, get away from me. But you could tell from the tone of his voice, he was playing with that child. So that's a kind of intimacy, right? That's a kind of intimacy that people have with each other where they understand through this kind of connection. Okay, so sometimes when we start practice, we have lots of ideas about practice. Maybe we have more ideas the more we do the practice. We come to the Zendo, we have ideas about how things should be changed. We come in and we say, oh, well, that's interesting, but that's a little cumbersome, like that practice or that form is, why don't we do it this way? Why don't we do oryoki, which is a formal eating style? Why don't we do oryoki this way instead of that way? Well, sometimes we do it this way instead of that way, just because it's more cumbersome to do it this way instead of that way. So it pushes your buttons to do it this way instead of that way. So there's this way in which, or maybe we feel uncomfortable about something. Like a lot of people don't like, they feel uncomfortable doing gasho. They're like, what? This? Do I do it like this? Do I do it here? Yeah. What is this about? Because it's not a gesture that we use in our culture. So people may feel uncomfortable about that and not want to do it. Or they may wonder, like, what is this thing about facing the altar and bowing? Are we bowing to Buddha? So we might think that there's a better way. We might think that, maybe we shouldn't do that at all. Like, we don't like that, so I don't want to do that. I was with Tatar with a guy, and whenever the servers came in to the kitchen to pick up the food to take it up to the Sendo, we would all stand in shashu, which is this gesture, right? So we'd all be standing there waiting in shashu. Or there's this one guy there, he just didn't like doing that. So he would just kind of hang around, and just do whatever. So that's a problem. It's a problem for him because whatever it is that's going on for him, he can't let go of it and just participate in that. Now, hopefully he went to his teacher and said, I don't like to stand in shashu, and work that out, and try to figure that out. I don't know whether he did or not, because that wasn't, I was just a fellow server in that situation. But that's an example of that. So one way that we face our mind and meet practice is just to do what's asked of us. So in that case, for him, just stand in shashu. There's almost never anything that you will be asked to do in that realm that's going to hurt you. And if you think it is, you should check it out with a teacher. But standing in shashu, unless you've got a physical problem, is not going to hurt you. Putting your hands in gaisho is not going to hurt you. So if you think it is, you should talk to the teacher, because it's important that you work through this stuff. But generally, resistance to formal practice is going to help us see our problems and where we get caught. And we use the practice to work with those things. And practice, this working with the forms, continues for a long time, because you kind of go through different stages of how you relate to what you're up to. So for example, if it's difficult bowing, then it's good to actually just do it. Now, if we're talking this kind of bowing, but there's full prostrations, which for a lot of people are just really hard to do. So physically not possible. But if it's physically possible for you and you have a lot of resistance to it because you're like thinking that you're bowing down to idols or that kind of stuff, in Zen we would say, well, just do it. Just do it anyway. And you might find out that your willingness to just do this thing is actually transformative. So bowing, talk about bowing, bowing, Suzuki Roshi said about bowing, he said, it is very important practice for diminishing our arrogance and egotism. It is not to demonstrate complete surrender to Buddha. This practice is to help get rid of our own selfishness. So that's interesting, to get rid of our own selfishness, which is why in the Suzuki Roshi lineage, service has 9 bows at the beginning of service. Usually it's 3. He said, well, okay, people have this resistance to bowing, so why don't we do 9 instead of 3? That's very Zen. You don't like it? Let's do more of it. Let's do more of this. Why? Because doing more of it actually helps you get in touch with your resistances and to ask yourself, when I first started practicing, I didn't like to do 9 bows. And I would go, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that to myself about the bows. And then as time went on, it's like I said, well, I do the refuges with the bows, I take refuge in Buddha, song, I do refuge as each bow that I would do. Now I'm not doing 9 bows because I need a knee replacement and it's really wonking up my knee. So I'm doing 3 at the beginning of service. So these things change, but your relationship to them also changes. And so, that's an important aspect of this. But initially, a lot of people have real problems with that. So another aspect of practice is Sangha, community, getting along with people in the Sangha. And the more things you do in the Sangha with other people, take on tasks that you're doing with other people, the more you discover that you have likes and dislikes, which is not surprising. In your everyday life, you have likes and dislikes, but in your everyday life, except maybe at work, you get to avoid the people you don't like. So when you come to a Zen center, all of a sudden you're meeting a lot of different people who you may or may not like them. It's interesting about likes and dislikes. They can arise immediately before you even know this person. It's like you never met them before and you don't like them for what various reasons, whatever it is that you've got going. So working in Sangha together means that we have to get along together and figure out ways to work with each other. And that's really helpful in everyday life as well. But that's one of the aspects of being in Sangha. And the other thing about forms is that the more we do the practice, maybe we start getting very invested in how well we do the practice. And so we say to ourselves, man, I really do this well. I'm really good at this. And so when you do that, often what goes along with that is you become very critical of everybody else who's in the Sangha, because you're watching other people, because you're comparing yourself to other people. Otherwise, you wouldn't think you were so hot, because the way you think you're so hot is because you're making comparisons, right? And so you're looking around going, wow, I'm really something here. Look at me. I can do all these forms and I'm so elegant and all of that kind of stuff. And so you get critical of other Sangha members because they don't do as well as you should. So, if this judgmental attitude might be arising in your mind, then that is a problem. And that's just the kind of thing that happens that we need to work with. During one practice period at Tassajara, one of our Sangha members decided that they didn't like the way everybody else was chanting. So they would try to chant louder than everybody else was chanting so that they would teach us, the rest of us, how it was supposed to be done. Now, this person wasn't like the most senior person there, but they were kind of like mid-management, right? In a formal situation, there's somebody called a kokyo who's like a chanter. I mean, they lead the chanting. So the idea is that you follow the kokyo, or you follow the makugyo, the drum over there that you hit. And the instruction that we have for chanting is to chant with your ears. So you chant with your ears means that you're hearing and listening to the people next to you. You're listening to the whole group. So your chanting is in relationship to the whole assembly that's chanting. So to suddenly decide that your chanting was better than anybody else's chanting out of 30 people, and that you were going to just chant louder and try to force everybody to chant with you when you didn't have the authority to do that, that's a problem. So that's a problem for everybody else, but it is a real problem for the person who's caught in that as a practitioner. So this is struggling with a bull, right? This is like struggling with these various aspects of the practice that you're doing, because you're not doing the practice. You are doing the practice in the sense that the practice is in part about engendering these kinds of feelings so that you can work with these feelings. I mean, it's a place where you can work with this, because outside the context of the totality of this, does it matter if you gasho this way or that way or never gasho? I mean, really, in the grand scheme of your life? And if you do it wrong, in the grand scheme of your life, does it really matter if you do it wrong? Like, if you can't drive your car and you run over someone, that's a problem. In real life, that's like a real problem. But if you don't know how to gasho, or you don't know exactly how to do service, because when you first come to service, I was so scared when I first went to service at San Francisco Zen Center. I had a friend that I noticed came to Zazen a lot, but she didn't go to service either. So one morning we're standing outside the Buddha hall and we said, okay, let's go to service this morning. Now, the reason service was scary was because everybody was wearing black robes and it's almost like a precision drill team, but you don't know the precision drill. So it's like, you're like going, how am I going to do this? Is really scary. Like, what if I turn the wrong way? When everybody else is turning left, I turn right, you know? Yeah, okay. You just turned right when everybody turned left. And you ran into somebody and then you realized, oh, yeah, okay, I'm supposed to go left. Everybody in there had exactly the same experience, but they don't tell you that. They just let you work it out on your own. So it's kind of scary, but on the other hand, it's like, it's not life or death. It's a great venue to work out these kinds of issues, to work out this kind of fear of not being cool, fear of not knowing what's going on, you know, that kind of stuff or the stuff of, oh, I do know what's going on. So there's a certain relief of that, like, oh, okay, I got it now. But then there's the, aren't I something? I really have got it. Or the other thing is, I'm going to go tell everybody else how to do it. So these are all great ways to work on this drop in the self, this work on these things that come up for all of us that are not particularly helpful, that can be translated into your daily life, that start to get translated into your daily life without you having to think about it. It just starts to happen. Suzuki Roshi said, oh, and then there's the side of like, you don't do something very well. You really feel like you can't get it or whatever. Another example from Tassar is there was a woman there who everybody loved her, and she was kind and wise and all this stuff, but she could not keep time on the Mukugyo or on the Han, which is a thing you beat, a piece of wood you beat to bring people to the Zendo. She never could get that, you know. So if you're being critical of that person, I mean, that's not particularly helpful. And if you're that person, being critical of yourself is not helpful. You know, you just make your best effort, be very sincere and make your best effort to do the practice as best you can. And that's a mature effort. That's what's being asked for, is that you take it seriously, you do your best, and whatever arises, you try to work with that arises with yourself and with your teacher, and to try to figure out what's happening, what's going on. And if you're not good at the forms, you know, not to denigrate yourself, because actually denigrating ourselves is a form of attachment to ego. Denigrating ourselves is saying, you know, me. I'm this, I'm not this, I'm this. Instead of just letting it go and just do your best you can without all the verbiage that goes on around that. You know, just do this thing, whatever this thing is, to do your best. In traditional Japanese setting, nobody ever tells you how to do anything. You come in and you watch other people and you figure out how to do these forms by watching other people. So that's an interesting practice. And as Americans, we're not very good at that. We tend to miss a lot. And maybe it's because we're so caught up in our heads, and also because we don't have that culture to learn that way, you know, to learn by seeing what other people are doing. That's why Suzuki Roshi said, practice is first, understanding comes afterwards. So doing the practice is first. This activity of the practice is first. Come do service, learn the forms. Don't worry about what they mean. Just do this thing. You can find out what it's about later. And then, so we just make this effort. And, so, you know, this practice is like trying to lead the bull home in this picture, you know, we've got the bull, which is both, you know, the side of ourselves that is, you know, the altruistic side that is awakened, our bodhicitta, this mind that's wanting to do the practice, being engaged in the practice. But, you know, we have ideas about what that is. And so we can't really tame the bull at that point. The bull is taming us, actually. So we are getting tamed by maybe being drug along by this bull. And so this is this way in which to actually really engage the practice and to find out what it's about. So anyway, they're all of the aspects of practice, whether we're doing work practice or ceremony or sitting zazen, or doing something as a community, putting something together with each other. They all are part of this process. So facing our likes and dislikes and being asked to change our ways to fit this larger mandala of this practice in community can be a very big struggle. And our ego is a great will, has great power, and it wants what it wants. And sometimes it's really difficult to do the practice. It's really difficult to do Zen practice. You know, in modern culture, Zen now means calm. No, I hate to tell you this, but being drug along behind the bull does not feel calm. Lots of practice doesn't feel very calm at all, but it's really worth it. It's really worth the effort to put into this, to learn how to drop these ways that we are that are not skillful and are not helpful. And then, you know, we get to ride the ox home. Well, here in the next picture, he's leading the ox, and then finally he gets to ride the ox home. So, you know, that's what happens over time if we continue to make this effort and practice. So thank you very much.